Good morning, Virgo. Silent. That is where this starts. Not with the boom, not with the shocking reveal, not with the out of nowhere arrival that the title is promising, and that is coming. In everything that follows this word, with the silent, which is where things actually are right now, in whatever specific situation you are bringing to this message as the context for what you are reading and hoping to understand from the specific position of someone who is in the silent and waiting for something to break it in whatever form the breaking takes. When it finally comes, the silent is real. And the silent has been for long enough that it has the quality of something. That might simply continue indefinitely in the particular and uncomfortable way that silences feel when they have lasted long enough to begin to feel like the permanent condition rather than the temporary state that they actually are in the specific situation. You are reading this from welcome and stay with me through the silent on the way to the boom. I want to describe the silent first in the specific and honest form of what silences actually are. When they exist between two people who have something between them that the silence is not resolving, but also is not destroying in the complete and permanent way of something that is fully over and settled and closed. The silence is not nothing. I want to say that clearly. And in the most direct form available, because silences are often misread as nothing, as the absence of feeling or of caring or of the particular attention that the person in the silence would need to be paying for the silence to eventually break in the form of something being said or done or initiated. That changes the silent into something else. The silence is the form that something takes when the something is not yet ready or not yet clear or not yet formed enough to be brought into the visible space between two people in the form that a real expression of it would require. Whew. Silences hold things in the specific and interesting way of a space that appears empty, but that is actually full of everything that has not yet found its form for expression, and that is continuing to develop in the interior of the person who is holding it in the silent while the visible space between you shows only the absence of what is forming rather than the forming itself, which is happening invisibly on the other side of the silence you are currently in. The silence is full of what is about to break it, and the breaking is closer than the silence has been suggesting by its particular quality of appearing permanent when it is not. I want to describe what has been happening on the other side of the silence in the interior of the person or situation. That is holding what the silence is holding. Because understanding what is on the other side changes the quality of the waiting that the silence is requiring of you right now. From the quality of waiting for something unknown to the quality of waiting for something specific. That is forming on the other side of the silence. And that will arrive when it is fully formed. In the boom that the title is promising, on the other side of the silence, something is being worked through. In the specific and interior form of something that requires the working through before it can be expressed, in the visible and external form that the boom delivers, when the working through is complete enough for the expression to be possible, what is being worked through is something that requires honesty of the specific and demanding kind. That honesty requires, when it is directed inward rather than outward at the person who is honest about themselves first, before they can be honest about what they feel or want or need to say in the direction of the person who is on the outside of the silence, waiting for the boom. The honesty is the work of the silence, and the silence has been long enough because the honesty required was the difficult kind. That takes the time it takes to arrive at the full and complete form rather than the partial form. That would have been available sooner, but that would not have produced the complete and honest expression that the boom delivers. When the working through is done, the working through is done, or nearly done, and the boom is the result of the working through having been completed to the point where the expression is finally possible in the complete and honest form that the silence was protecting while the working through was happening, and that is now ready to break the silence in the boom because the title says it twice, and the repetition is deliberate and deserves attention as the specific device it is in the communication of what is happening, in the energy around the situation. You are reading this from the second silent, is the moment of pause just before the breaking, the specific and intensified quiet that happens in the last moment, before something significant shifts. In the way that the last moment before a shift is often the quietest moment of all, because whatever energy was producing the silence has reached its fullest point of accumulation and is about to release in the form of the breaking that the accumulation was always building toward. The second silent is the held breath of something about to arrive that has been forming through the entire period of the first silent, and that is now fully formed enough to break the silence it was forming within in the specific and explosive form that the boom in the title is describing. Then boom. I want to pause on that word before I describe what the boom actually is, because boom is a very specific word and it is doing very specific work in the title that I want to honor by describing what it is actually pointing at, rather than letting it function only as a dramatic marker that signals something significant without specifying what that something is. Boom is the sound of something that was accumulated under pressure, releasing suddenly in a volume and a force that is proportionate to the pressure that was building and the time it was building under it. The boom in this situation is proportionate to the silence, and the silence has been significant, which means the boom will also be significant in the specific and direct form of something releasing that has been accumulated under the pressure of the silence for as long as the silence has lasted. In the form it has been present in your specific situation. Whew. The boom is not random, and it is not literally out of nowhere, even though the title says out of nowhere, because it will feel like out of nowhere when it arrives in the form that boom arrivals always feel like, from the perspective of someone who was in the silence and did not know what the silence was holding, and therefore did not know what was coming when the silence broke in the form it is about to break in. But it is coming from somewhere very specific, from the interior of the person or situation that has been in the silence with you, or that has been in the silence you have been feeling, from the outside of the silence they have been in, and from the specific accumulation of whatever has been forming in that interior over the entire period of the silent and the silent that preceded the boom. I want to tell you what the shocking reveal is in the specific terms I can give you from the reading of the energy around your specific situation, because shocking reveals come in very different forms, and I want to describe the specific form that this one is taking so you can recognize it when it arrives, rather than being so surprised by it that the surprise prevents you from being fully in the receiving of it in the most complete form available to someone who knows roughly what is coming, even if not in the full and specific detail of someone who has seen it in advance. The shocking reveal is about feeling. Someone's feeling that has been present through the entire period of the silence, and that is now arriving at the point where the silence cannot contain it any longer, and the reveal happens as the natural result of something that was held reaching the point where the holding is no longer possible in the contained form it has been held in during the period of the silent. The feeling that is about to be revealed is not what you have been assuming it was. During the silence, whatever assumption the silence produced about what the person in the silence was feeling or not feeling in relation to you and in relation to what exists between you, the actual feeling is different from the assumption in the direction that makes the reveal actually shocking, which is the direction of more than was assumed, more feeling than the silence was suggesting, more presence than the silence was indicating, more direction toward you than the silence gave any reason to believe was there. The assumption the silence produced was that the silence meant distance or cooling or the beginning of an ending, of something that was diminishing under the weight of the silence. That seemed to be making it smaller rather than simply holding it in the full form that it was always going to break the silence in when the time came for the breaking. The assumption was wrong. The feeling was not cooling. The feeling was accumulating. And the accumulation is what the boom delivers. When it finally arrives in the shocking and out of nowhere form of something that was never absent, but that was present in the invisible form of what silences hold when they are holding something real rather than nothing. As they appeared to be holding from the outside of the silence where you have been during the entire period of the silent and the silent. I want to speak about the shock quality of the reveal because shock is in the title and I want to honor it. By describing what makes this reveal shocking in the specific and accurate form rather than in the general form of something being larger than expected without the specific description of what the larger than expected actually consists of. The shock comes from the gap between what the silence was suggesting and what the boom reveals. The silence was suggesting something, and the boom reveals something different. Not slightly different, not in the marginal way, of a reveal that adjusts the expectation by a small and manageable amount in the direction of something marginally more favorable or marginally less favorable than what was anticipated. The gap is significant. In the specific and surprising form of the silence having suggested one thing and the boom arriving with the evidence that the thing the silence was suggesting was not what was actually happening. In the invisible dimension of the silence, where what was actually happening was the complete opposite of what the silence appeared to be indicating. From outside, the silence appeared to indicate distance. The boom reveals proximity. The silence appeared to indicate cooling. The boom reveals the opposite. The silence appeared to indicate an ending approaching. The boom reveals the full continuation of what was always there in the invisible form of the silence that contained it while the working through happened on the other side that you were not on. During the entire period of the silent and the silent, for how to receive the boom when it arrives, because boom arrivals, when they are the boom of something that was accumulated under pressure, and that releases suddenly in a volume proportionate to the pressure, can be disorienting, even when what is released is something you were hoping for. In whatever form you were allowing yourself to hope during the period of the silence, the disorientation comes from the speed of it, the way that the transition from silent to boom happens faster than the preparation for it would suggest is coming, and leaves the person receiving the boom in the particular state of someone who went from waiting to receiving in the time of a single moment without the gradual transition. That most significant arrivals provide as they build toward the full form of their landing. The boom does not provide the gradual transition. That is what makes it a boom, rather than a gradual development. And the receiving of a boom requires a specific kind of readiness that is different from the readiness required for a gradual development. The readiness the boom requires is the readiness of someone who is fully in the present moment. When the boom arrives, rather than still in the anticipated future moment where the boom was expected to arrive, in the form it was expected to take when the expectation was formed in the silence before the boom, be present when the boom arrives in the actual moment of its actual arrival, rather than in the moment you were expecting or in the form you were expecting, because the boom is going to arrive in the moment it chooses, in the form it takes, and the person who is present for that specific moment and that specific form receives the full volume of what it releases. I want to say something about what happens after the boom, because the title ends at the boom, at the shocking reveal, and I want to look briefly past the ending of the title at what the boom produces in the moments and days that follow its arrival, because the after matters as much as the boom itself for how the reveal lands and what it produces in the situation and the connection between you and whatever person or situation the boom is arriving from. After the boom, there is a specific quality of stillness that follows the release of something that was held under pressure for an extended period. The stillness that comes when the pressure is no longer present and what was holding is no longer holding, and everything has been released into the open space of what was said or done in the boom. Be in that stillness. When it arrives as the specific and necessary space between the boom and the response to the boom, that allows the full weight of what was revealed to settle into your understanding of the situation before any action or response is required or offered in the visible and relational dimension between you and the person or situation. The boom arrived from the stillness after the boom is as important as the boom itself, because it is in the stillness that what was revealed becomes actually known rather than only received. In the first and somewhat disorienting moment of the boom arriving, before the full weight of it has had time to settle into the understanding that follows. When the stillness does what stillness does after a boom, which is allow the settling that the boom itself cannot allow because of the particular quality of its arrival, which is fast and loud and proportionate to the silence that preceded it. Both of them, the first and the second, the building silence and the held breath silence, that is the last quiet before the boom. You are in the held breath now, in the second silent, that the title names with the repetition of the same word. used twice to indicate the two distinct forms of the quiet that precedes, the boom that follows, whew, then boom, out of nowhere, from the specific somewhere that the silence has been holding it in for the entire period of the forming. That produced the accumulated force of what is about to release in the shocking and significant form of a reveal that was never absent, only silent. Be there for it, in the full presence of someone who is ready to receive the volume of what the silence was holding. In the form the boom delivers it, which is complete and significant and proportionate to everything that was forming. In the silence and the silence, before the boom arrived, it is coming out of nowhere, which is always the specific somewhere that something real was always coming from. Before it arrived in the form that made the somewhere visible as the place it had been all along,